In this episode of the Make Men Godly Again podcast, I sit down with Cody Jefferson to unpack how men can stay grounded in their faith while leading their families, their purpose, and battling the burdens of the many hats that we men wear. If you're tired of feeling distant from the God that you say that you believe in, let alone bearing the fruit that proves that belief, this conversation is not only going to call you to rise, but it's going to give you the steps forward and up. I want to take this time to also correct myself. While introducing Cody, I stated that he was an owner of Spiritual World Tour, but he humbly corrected me in respect of those that he works with, letting me know that he is not an owner, but a partner. I hope that you enjoy this podcast, and if you do, please subscribe and share it with a brother. Welcome to the Make Men Godly Again podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Warter, and today's guest is Cody Jefferson. Cody is a family man, first and foremost, the trophy husband to his wife, Sarah, Stetson Foster's dad, Titus Oliver's bonus dad, and a former pastor turned entrepreneur. He is the founder of a coaching and consulting company, Embrace the Lion, founded in 2017.
Yep.
He owns an apparel company called Spiritual World Tour, which you may have seen on some of your favorite Christian musicians and country artists like Morgan Wallen, Post Malone, Parker McCollum, Corey Kent, and he's got several other companies that he is involved in. And if that is all you knew about him, you'd think, man, must be nice. But Cody has experienced a world-shattering amount of death, heartache, health challenges, and circumstances that would lead most men to turning from their faith. But here he is. And he's a man that I believe is doing something rare, reflecting God's character while walking the dominion that he designed us to carry. So, Cody Jefferson, welcome.
What's up, brother? Solid intro.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I did my homework.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah. Let me pray us in and then we'll get started.
Let's go.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this calling and this incredible opportunity. Please use Cody and I in this moment. Your word says that where two or more gather in your name, that you are present. So we want to invite the Holy Spirit in to hijack this conversation, for you to use us as your mouthpiece and to use this conversation as a bridge, bridging the gap for the man who says he believes, but his behavior and his fruit does not reflect that belief. Father, I ask that this is not just another podcast that this man listens to and then goes on to another podcast, never integrating anything that he heard within it, within the conversation, but that he takes one golden nugget from it and takes action on it so that he can get results. And I pray that you bless him with fruit to give it as feedback for his faithfulness. We pray all this in Jesus Christ's mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Let's run it.
What do our listeners need to understand about your past to grasp how you've become the man you are today?
Solid question. What do you need to know about where I've been? Let me flip that on you, because I don't know your listeners, but you do. What do you think is useful for them to know? Because, I have a pretty open story, and you can find it a lot of places. What do you think would be useful for them to know?
Well, from our call last week,
Yeah.
there's, I love it. There's some things that you've faced.
Yeah.
Right? The one thing that really struck me was that I've never met somebody who's dealt with more death than me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
From early age of 10 years old on, I've dealt with a lot, and I've never really met anybody that's dealt with more than me. On top of that, you've got, you've been in the game a little longer.
Yeah.
And so you've, not just in relationships, with business, everything. I think that the divorce, being a pastor, there's some several hats that you've worn.
Yeah.
And you've now gotten to a place where you've been able to integrate your faith, your family, and business sustainably, and understanding that the process that you had to go through as a man and God working on your heart to be able to sustain that is like really what I'm aiming
Cool.
to extract.
Yeah.
If that can give you a starting point.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, so like in a nutshell, so I was raised in rural Oklahoma. We're in Tulsa right now. Welcome. Thanks for making the drive over.
Absolutely.
So grew up in rural Oklahoma. I was raised by a single dad and by my grandparents. So I would say that, you know, a lot of my work ethic and the way in which I kind of lived and moved and had my being really came from like just a different style of upbringing. I mean, we grew up in the country. We didn't have a lot, but everything we had, you know, we made the most of. Being raised by grandparents is a different kind of upbringing because they're just from a completely different generation. So, you know, we grew up, again, usually doing woodworking or working on some sort of engine or in a garden because my grandparents had a 1/4-acre garden. So I just learned, you know, hard work and work ethic at a really young age and was never really smarted enough to know that I couldn't do something. And so in high school, started wrenching on cars, you know, got my mechanic certification, went and got my barber's license, went to university, got in ministry full-time at 19, which is a pretty wild story because I don't know that any 19-year-old should be on stage leading 5,000 people, but here we are. But it was a beautiful season. I think the problem for me growing up, and maybe not problem, but one of the things that exacerbated some of the issues that I faced in people pleasing and like addiction to affirmation and wanting to be all things to all people, I didn't get a lot of praise and affirmation as a kid. And so only, you know, when you would do something really spectacular. And so that kind of led to always looking to feed that. And so I'm only, you know, worth loving if I'm providing value in some way or if I'm useful. And so then you get into ministry not really knowing your identity, but you have a lot of people who need a lot of things. And so that's just like a straight IV of affirmation. About 13 years in occupational ministry, and I just say occupational because I'm more a pastor now than I was behind a pulpit, get to reach more people. But yeah, in ministry for 13 years, and then in 2017, you know, started Embrace the Lion, which was really more of a journey for me. You know, I went through a divorce while I was in ministry, and I went through a lot of loss. And I lost a lot of family members, a lot of friends, a couple mentors, and then ended up, as a result of that, going septic, just trying to navigate all the pain, the loss, and overworking while going through a divorce and being all things to all people. God's got a plan, everything's good. You know, that just get through it, right? But not really even knowing how to process it. When you're processing, I mean, I was processing like a death a month, sometimes more than once a month. You know, I'm 41 and I've, you know, 144 funerals deep. So it was a lot. And so my body just shut down, went septic in 2017. And that was kind of the turning point for me that, like, if I don't get things together and if I don't change something, like, I'm going to sacrifice everything I love on the altar of some self-perceived success. So that's where ETL was kind of born, which originally was Embrace the Lion of the Tribe of Judah, but that's like such a long URL, you know, for like for an email. And I'm like, nobody's going to write that out. And so it was just Embrace the Lion and, again, embrace God. And so I had to go on a journey, man, of getting myself healthy, putting habits in place, putting boundaries in place, kind of unpacking why I was doing the things I was doing. Certainly the motivation was good, but there were some unhealthy pieces to it. And some things in terms of like affirmation and insecurity that I didn't want to pass on to my son, because if we don't transform the trauma, then, you know, we transmit it to those that we love. And started sharing online, started sharing the journey, sharing the story. It wasn't sexy. Like, I didn't have some like 7 figures in 7 days story like you see on the internet. I stepped out of ministry to start wrenching on Harleys. And I was flipping Harleys out of my garage while building websites for churches and playing music on the weekends and cutting hair out of my front room. Just doing anything I could to make my monthly burn while trying to build this vision for where I felt like God was leading me. And what do you know? It took off, and here we are.
What was that point where you were like really going down into the pit?
Yeah.
And most men wait until they're at absolute rock bottom
Yeah.
to make any changes. Do you feel like you were at absolute rock bottom, or do you feel like you caught yourself just beforehand?
To the level of my own awareness, it felt like rock bottom.
Yeah. What was the thing you were afraid of most that actually made you change?
Dying. Yeah, my son not having a dad that he could be proud of. That was the biggest thing. And just recognizing my own unhealth and what everything had caused to that point.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be responsible.
Were you distant from God at that time? Were you in your spiritual practice?
So when I stepped out of ministry, I wouldn't really say that was like a deconstruction. I think I was just angry. I was just mad. I was hurt. I was confused. I was wounded. I had a lot of pain that I didn't know what to do with. And that was when I really started kind of the personal development journey. So then you got to be very, very careful where you get your information. And so I was just getting information from everywhere, which was confusing my belief system, because when you're in ministry, or when your job is God and God is your job, that's really all I'm reading. Mm-hmm. And so then I step out and I just start reading everything, confuse the heck out of myself, because now I'm like, I don't know if I believe this because my grandparents took me to church when I was a kid. I don't know if I believe this because I went to school for it. I don't know if I believe this because I'm paid to teach it, And so then you take all of that, and I took it online and started talking about it and bleeding on people who never cut me, and confused a lot of people, hurt a lot of people. Because when I first got into this space, like, all the dudes who were in coaching were yelling and using a lot of profanity and like talking people down, not building people up, which was the antithesis of everything I had done for, my entire adult professional life. And so I went that direction, and I just let my pain run wild, and it confused a ton of people. I was a youth pastor for 10 years, hurt a lot of my students, hurt a lot of their parents, wondered if anything was ever true or real with me. It was messy, dude. It was messy. Yeah. And thankfully, God's grace, like, there's been a lot of people who were very patient through that process and journey. And then there are those who, we now walk in distance as a result of it. But it had to be that way, right? Like, that was the story. That's what I had to walk through. So that's what I did. No point in wondering if it could have been any different.
Yeah. I feel like there's stepping back into this conversation around God after running away from it for so many years and being repelled by the word God, Jesus, amen, the Bible, hallelujah, all of it. Just, I couldn't. I had a visceral reaction to just the words after growing up in the Catholic Church.
Why?
I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
I know that I was forced, and I had so many questions, and nobody could answer them for me, and that frustrated me. And then, the first death I experienced was my best friend dying in a house fire, and I watched it go up in flames. And then I had so many other deaths stack, which is part of this. Like, when it's stacking, do you feel like you've ever really battled with the question, like, if God is good, then why did this happen?
Yeah, I don't think you go through trauma and don't think that at least once or twice.
Right.
I never really rested on it. I think I had enough faith, maybe is the right word, probably the most appropriate word. I had enough faith to recognize that, like, there's just a plan that's bigger than me. And it wasn't even until this year I was hosting an event with a dear friend, David Bayer, and brilliant in mindset and psychology and spirituality, just a dear friend. And we were talking, and we were navigating through some of this. He's like, you're one of the brightest lights in any room. And I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate it. He's like, but it only exists because of all the loss. Because it's always front of mind for you, and you carry it. And so that's the reflection. That's God's call in your life, is to bear this, to reflect light. And I'd never associated it that way. But it is true. When you experience that kind of loss, one, you recognize that, or you lean on the notion that God has to be real. But then two, you never really take your foot off of like the idea that life is finite. And so if life is finite, then I don't want to, like, procrastination to me is like assuming God's going to give me another day to do what he's called me to today. So every day matters. And so it actually, I think it pulled my faith deeper rather than making me question what the plan is or if God's real or why he would allow certain things to happen. It would be more, I would ask, what are you calling me to trust me with this kind of pain?
Yeah. It's interesting now it's kind of reflected back to me that I don't think I had any strong roots in belief. I mean, it was all very surface level, and the conviction that I felt, all of it really turned me away. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I ran the other way.
Yeah.
And so because I didn't have any faith and no roots at all, really, when more death and tragedy came into my life, when my partner was shot and killed covering my shift on the only day I took off all year, he's got a wife, 2 little girls, and a little boy on the way, and I have none of that. To me, it solidified my disbelief in God. Like, there's no way. And obviously now over the last year and a half, that has changed dramatically. But I feel like now stepping into this space, there are so many men who say they believe in God. They say that they believe in his word, but they are not behaving as if they do. Why do you think that is? It's such a dramatic amount, like it's a significant amount of men who are saying that, and their fruit is not reflecting it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to the motivation of every man. I mean, I think that might be arrogant to say so. But when a man lacks purpose, I mean, he's like a ship without a rudder. So you can say a lot of things, but when you don't have a clear direction on where you're going or what your intentions are, and you don't have the actions that align to those intentions, and you don't have the accountability to create like a boundary fence around what it is that you say that you want, and accountability to ensure that you're moving toward those things, it's just very easy to drift. I don't believe any man sets out to act contrary to what he says he believes, but it's little things, and those little things stack, and those little ways in which we give ourselves wiggle room, loosens things up to where we just give ourselves more and more and more rope till eventually, like, we end up, hanging ourselves with it. And so I don't think it's any man's intention to set out and create habits and infrastructure to separate himself from God. I also don't know that the church as a whole does a really great job of shepherding and stewarding what healthy masculinity looks like and how to actually be a man who follows God. I mean, you can read the word, you can internalize it. I'll say that most church, and I say like charismatic, evangelical church, most church is fairly feminine and has been fairly feminized.
Yeah.
And it's majority women who attend and then bring their husbands, so we have to appeal to women, but then create enough masculinity so that the guy will stay. But even in culture, there's a lot of articulation around the unhealthy parts of, masculinity. So I think guys they're put in a really interesting position of not feeling probably comfortable to be fully who they're called to be, but then also not even knowing how to articulate who that man is. So we drift.
The speaking engagement you had this last weekend, was it on identity?
Uh-huh.
So I was thinking about this on the drive here, of this intersection between identity, purpose, God's design, and then where business comes in, and just like wrapped in faith. And I was trying to figure out, like, where can I come up with a way to direct this conversation in that way.
Yeah.
But there's so many aspects to it.
Yeah.
How do you simplify, like, obviously you spoke on this last weekend. How do you simplify that and break that down to deliver that to somebody that they can actually apply something from it?
Sure. Well, so let's break down purpose. Purpose is in everything that you do. I think the church has done a really good job, and personal development's done a really good job of creating a commodity out of your purpose. And so we can sell you a lot of books on how to find your purpose. But it's only good enough until the next book comes out, because then there's more purpose you have to find, and you actually haven't found it yet at all. And so it keeps you hooked. But the reality is, like, purpose is just in everything that you do. It's the intention that you set out. It's the priorities that you keep. It is the identity that you seek to create boundaries around. So, like, we say it very simply, like, this is who I am, so this is what I do. And my identity is multifaceted. So I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm, a founder, I'm a communicator, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a son, I'm a grandson. And if I'm a healthy version of all of these, then what do I do on a daily basis that affirms that? And so identity, for me, identity is rooted in Genesis 1:26, that God has created us with dominion, birds of the air, fish of the sea, beasts of the land. Like, this is who we are, this is what we do. That was the original mandate. And then obviously we fell to sin, and then so the kingdom was shaken, and through Christ, now it's reconciled back into that original mandate. So first and foremost, God chose me. And if I understand that and I believe that, that should inform how I live and move and have my being. So I can't then rest on, and every day we're making agreements, and we're living out agreements. Some of those agreements we made consciously, and some of them we made subconsciously, and they're agreements that we made with our parents, with our coaches, with our teachers, with exes, with old friends. And those agreements are the contracts that run our day-to-day. And about 95% of them we don't think about. And so when we start to shift how we approach identity, then we have to start taking an audit of what those agreements are. Like, what are the outcomes that I'm experiencing in life? Are they the outcomes that I want? Or subconsciously, am I living out the outcomes that I feel that I deserve? And so then we have to look at worthiness and say, okay, why do I feel that I deserve this? Why do I feel I don't deserve this? And is that true? For me growing up, early years for me was pretty chaotic with my upbringing. And so I didn't understand peace. And so the only way I really found peace was in regulating the emotions of unhealthy adults. And so then growing up, again, like, you find that, like, in ministry and everything else, like, you're constantly solving problems. So there's that chaos element. And so long as I'm operating in chaos, that feels like peace.
And then you'll create it if peace comes.
And so then if peace comes, now we create chaos, because that's the only way that it can exist. And if I'm not solving something, if I'm not creating a solution to something, you're not going to love me, because you wouldn't just love me if we were peaceful, because nobody else did. And so there's all these agreements that we're making all the time. So we have to audit those. Then we have to say, okay, what do I actually want? What could be true? And if that's true, and if it could be true, well, then what are the implications and what needs to change? The question that we ask every day is, what then needs to die in me to become the man that I said that I would be?
Did this relationship with validation and problem solving for you, did that translate into your relationship with God at all?
Well, yeah, because my job was God in my mind, right? I mean, I was a pastor. Like,
Well, you say that you're more a pastor now than you ever been.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
The influence that God has cultivated in my life as a result of what I believe is just being faithful is just incredibly, like, multiplied. So where I was leading, 1,000, 2,000 people at a time, now, we reach millions of people a month organically through social content. Now I'm, traveling every month speaking. So the influence has grown, but my message has stayed the same. Like, if you go to my social profile, like, I mean, it's a lot of pastoring. It's a lot of, biblical leaning and understanding, a lot of, like, stewarding the insights that God has given me to be able to bear fruit in other people's lives. And so with that comes, dozens, sometimes over 100 messages a day, to just people needing prayer or insights or advice on something and counsel. And one of the agreements that I made with God, not that you make agreements with God, but in my head it made sense, was that if I ever got too big, if I ever, like, my ego got the best of me, or if I got too cool that I couldn't answer. Because, I'll hear all the time from, people in the industry with me, like, you can't scale this. Like, you cannot just keep answering everyone's messages. Like, you've got to pull back on that, because now you're watering down, the accessibility, and you need to create that barrier so that you're not as accessible, so your time's more valuable. I'm like, if I ever get to that place, just take it all away. Because if I can't just walk with people, right? Now, if you want like access to me on a day, like, yeah, we have investment levels for that.
Yeah.
But never to push someone away simply because they're not investing with me in some way.
Yeah.
I never bought into that. So I would say, like, again, I'm more a pastor now just because of the reach. And so trying to steward that as effectively as I can.
Yeah. Which I think the pure intention that you're maintaining, or doing your best to maintain, which I'm sure is not always easy, but
no, well, I mean, everybody's desperate to be known, and they'll often just settle for being seen. And so when someone shares something with you, it's a really vulnerable, it's a God moment.
yeah.
And so you want to honor that, and you want to respect that, because they're trusting you. And that's not something to take lightly, especially when a lot of people have trust issues, or they're carrying things they've been carrying for years that they've never shared with anyone. And you get to be the person that bears that. So it's just it's a humbling responsibility and a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you stay faithful to God when success gives you the option to become self-sufficient?
Well, one, I mean, I believe we have autonomy regardless, so we're self-sufficient because God has gifted us the autonomy to be that way. I think it just comes down to stewardship.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is like, what's the fruit? I know a lot of people who make a lot of money and they're just broke with money. And so I would say, look at the fruit of my life. Like, for me, like, if we're talking like financial success, one, we get to steward that more effectively in the ways in which we give. Two, allows me to hire more people so that I get more time back, so that I can spend more time with my family. And so for me, it's just, again, what are my values? What are my priorities? Ethically, what is sound? And, I'm not really a big, I like nice things, so I'm not a super materialistic person. So for me, it's more stewarding it in ways that make more sense to either reach more people or to create sufficiency for my family in the long term if something would ever happen to me. But accountability. I also have mentors in my life who, I would say that I do fine. But compared to them, I'm in poverty. Like I'm friends with, some of mentors that are legitimate billionaires. And they're the most generous, humble, quiet. Do not talk about their wealth. Don't flaunt it. There's no reason to. There's nothing to prove. And that, I think, to me, having that accountability in my life and recognizing that if I ever did go down that path, if I ever was really irresponsible or real flashy online, or anything else, it might hurt those relationships, because it would just show that that's what's driving me.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that accountability in check and having good mentors in my life and having godly mentors in my life is crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need that around me. I want that around me.
Yeah. I guess when I say self-sufficient, I mean fully depending on yourself and not God.
Yeah.
Right? Where you just, because there's a lot of people that have this relationship with God where they only go to Him or turn to Him when they need something.
Well, I mean, I'm good, but I'm not that good. Like, this is God's. And so I'm fully aware every single day. So one of our practices, so we have 126, which is our brotherhood, right? So we talk about masterminds. So that's our brotherhood. And every morning is daily gratitude. So personal, something you're personally grateful for, something you're professionally grateful for, and a personal quality about yourself that you're grateful for, which is hard for a lot of men to say something every day that they like about themselves. But when you can keep gratitude at the forefront and you can keep gratitude at the beginning of every single day, it positions you in a way to recognize whose this is in the first place. And so every morning, I post inside of our brotherhood, there's a daily proverb that we walk through. And as a result of that, I mean, we're just keeping, like, we're starting our day with intention, and we're keeping God at the center as we start our day. And so I think as a result of that, my belief is that it just aligns you in a different way.
Yeah. Since you brought up the 126 Brotherhood, I feel like God really placed on my heart to make sure that I highlight that.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because he's been building trust with me,
Cool.
or more so, deepening my faith and trust in him. Like, I think a lot of men might be afraid to highlight another man's business,
Oh,
right?
really?
And not want to risk losing clients to somebody else.
Oh, fair enough. Totally.
And so I want to highlight, if you can, just a little bit about what the Brotherhood is and who exactly it would be for, so that way they know if they are listening.
Yeah, sure. So 126 comes from the mandate, Genesis 126.
As soon as you said that on our call, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
The alignment.
And so what God kind of really led me to was that the world didn't need another mastermind. It needed a mandate. And we didn't need just another get together of men to beat chests and, do a lot of things that really don't further the kingdom. And also, like, where are the guys who are just looking to become better men, right? And to steward what they've been given effectively, and to learn how to deepen their walk with God while also deepening their intimacy and their relationship with their wives, to be more present with their kids, because none of this comes with a manual. And how do we become better leaders, and how do we foster leadership in our endeavors? So, most of our guys run their own entities, so they're business owners, because we can grow that, right? Not that if you're in a static position, like a salary position or anything else, that you wouldn't be welcome. Absolutely welcome. Just recognize that there's a cap to that, and so we like the opportunity to be able to build.
Yeah.
So we're a bunch of builders. These are salt of the earth guys, man. Like, it's not a flex show. It's not who's got the cooler toys, although, like, we do like cool toys. There's no egos, not a lot of flash. A lot of our guys are blue collar. A lot of our guys are in home services, running practices. So these are guys that are just, again, what does faith look like for a man who's been through some things, and the songs on Sunday morning don't sing like they used to? How do I actually do this? And how do I get around men who are super grateful for where they are and what they have, but they also want more, and that's okay, because God's called you to more. And if God's called you to more, how do we ensure that you stay on that path? How do we hold you accountable? How do we teach you how to become a better leader and how to steward more effectively what God's entrusted you with, so that he can entrust you with more? How do we become the standard? Like, it's our thing, set the standard.
Yeah.
How do we become the standard for our kids? How do we become men that our young men want to grow up and become? And how do we become men that our daughters want to grow up and we're the standard that they're looking to get married by? That's us. So, like, demo-wise, demographic, like, we're probably like 30 to 45-year-olds married with kids are most of our guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have some younger guys who are married but don't have kids yet.
Yeah. So speaking of this, these questions essentially that you're stating when it comes to how do we do this, what do you feel like are the major traits of a godly man? Right? And he's showing up, he's reflecting the character of God in each area of his life. What are the major traits that are the foundation of that?
Well, one, we could look at Galatians, so you can look at the fruits of the Spirit. So that's a real good place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever have a question, just go back to the Bible. It's been around for a long time, and it's a pretty good resource. I haven't found anything better yet.
Yeah.
So we got fruits of the Spirit, but then also, like, we have a few tenets that we believe men are to lead with. Like, if we are to have dominion, which isn't like overarching control, it is just being a healthy steward to what you're responsible for, right? But we have a few things. So one, we're called to protect. So to the best of your ability, you need to be in a physical and mental state to offer protection for your family, and even mental and emotional protection.
I mean, and right now it's a little bit more important than the physical in our current age.
100%.
And I think that's the one thing is a lot of men, it's almost like we're still playing catch up to realize that we're not still in the traditional role where you can just provide physically and financially and not provide anything mentally and emotionally. And that's where this statement is coming in of like, I don't need no man.
Yeah.
It's because like actually to survive, they don't. And so if you can't provide the mental and emotional support, why would I bother dealing with everything else that you bring to the table that makes my life more stressful?
Sure.
Right. So that's where it's coming from. But
when a lot of what we talk about, even inside of 126, there's a lot of, again, how do I show up for my family? How do I de-escalate myself? How do I not get angry all the time? Why am I always distracted? I really want to be really great with my family, but then I think I do because I also just really like working because I can control that.
Yeah.
But I go home and I have a hard time controlling this because you're not supposed to control it. And so we just how do I regulate all this and how do I find balance and cohesiveness? So one, protection. So we're called to protect. Two, we're called to provide. Call me old school, but I believe that we're providers, and so financially, emotionally, right? We're providers. Three, pioneers. So charting new paths and looking into one, how we do things differently than they've been done before. So for us, that could be in business endeavors. That can be in how we find healing from some of our own experiences, traumas, so that we stop generational curses and we stop generational patterns and we become the healthy place, and it starts with us. So how do we pioneer? And then fourth is pastor. So it's not the church's responsibility to raise your kids and to teach them about God. It's your responsibility. And it's your responsibility to live that out and model it as well. Right? So we have a high accountability toward like who we're called to be as men. Protect, provide, pioneer, pastor.
So this word pastor.
Yeah. Which is intimidating to some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like, I don't know if I want that kind of responsibility.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So the reason why I became a police officer originally was my cousin, who's like 2 years older than me, was always babysitting me.
Yeah.
And she ingrained the "be the change you wish to see in the world" quote in my head. And so I was arrested 4 times between 13 and 18. And I was always getting stopped by the police. I was the only white kid, and so they would treat me better than they'd treat my friends.
Yeah.
So all these experiences, NYPD beat me up when I was like 15, 16.
Jeez.
So I had all these experiences where like it was really frustrating. I'm like, okay, clearly somebody needs to do this better, so I'm going to go do it. And then fast forward, 10, 12 years later, now all of a sudden I just opened up the Bible for the first time in over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just now having God call me, which we didn't talk about, but he had used one of your posts.
Oh yeah.
In September 2023.
Get out of here.
I had, I went obviously 16 years, like not believing in God or anything. Had 4 years of deep into the New Age spirituality.
Sure.
And
as you do.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I have 3 conversations with men that I respect in business, who I'd had conversations with before, but now all of a sudden God is a part of the conversation. The last one, the Bible is a part of the conversation. And I'm like, pretty sure I have a Bible. And I had this rule that if it came in threes in a short period of time, I'd lean into it. Like I saw that as a sign. I have no idea where I got it from.
Your New Age spirituality.
What's that?
That's your New Age.
Yeah. But he used it. He used it. And so I end up, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have a Bible. I go look in this box of books, and I find this Bible that my training partner for Krav Maga gave me 10 years ago while in New Orleans when we were becoming instructors.
Yeah.
And it had my name engraved in it. So I was like, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
And I put it on the shelf because I was repelled by it.
Yeah.
And I knew what he was doing, and I loved him. So I respected it and kept it. And then in that 10 years, I sold everything I owned twice and had my storage unit flood while living in Barcelona. And somehow that Bible made it all the way with me.
Look at that.
And so I find it, open it, and I'm wrestling with the word and just like, this is written by man and all these things for 6 months. And then finally we're in a service and they're talking about baptism, and all of a sudden I'm getting emotional. I'm like, why am I crying? I never thought I'd step inside of a church, let alone actually like get baptized.
Yeah.
I'm like, I thought I already got baptized. What's the point of getting baptized now? All these things are like coming up for me. And I'm like, I'm emotional, so this means something.
Sure.
So a few days later, we ended up both, me and my wife, registering to get baptized. And we had just in this time switched churches. They had a pre-baptism interview where they're qualifying us to be baptized.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And the interview went well. And then afterwards he encouraged us to start volunteering.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. Just got to find a time that me and my girlfriend, because we weren't married yet, could do it together, because we only have one car. He's like, one car? I'm like, yeah. He's like, are you guys living together? I'm like, yeah. Like, that's bad. I'm like, okay. He's like, are you guys sleeping together? I'm like, yeah. That's horrible. I'm like, I literally just started opening the Bible. I haven't gotten to that part yet. I'm like, I don't like.
You're like, I'm still in Leviticus,
Yeah.
bro. I'm not even sure.
Yeah. But the one thing I did remember reading was slow to speak, slow to anger. And so I just like, instead, I can be very confrontational.
Yeah.
And so I just stopped and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And he's like, well, we can't allow you to represent the church and volunteer when you're essentially openly giving the middle finger to God. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's it mean about baptism? And he's like, I got to talk to the other pastors and I'll call you back. He texts me an hour later and says, we can't baptize you until you redeem your relationship under the authority of God and repent for all of your sins. And the walls that I built around my heart to keep God out for my entire life shot straight back up.
Sure.
And after like all settled, like the dust settled, I got back, I was wrestling with the word again. But the one thing I realized, I'm like, this is something I'm upset about, because the one thing I have a problem with is not authority, but poor leadership. And if you're a pastor and you're supposed to be leading me to God, and that's why I want to talk about the definition of what is a pastor really, like, what is their job supposed to be? Because I thought it was to help me get closer to God.
Yeah.
But the way that he handled this, zero grace, no questions, nothing at all, quoting scripture at me, did the complete opposite. And then my fear was like, oh my God, are you about to turn me into a pastor the way you did a police officer? Because this is the change I now want to see in the world.
Right.
And I started getting nervous because I'm like, I don't know if I want that responsibility.
Yeah.
And then comes in the fear of judgment, right? The fear of others judging me the way I once judged them.
Yeah.
And it was a huge challenge. But now, as like, I told you a little bit of the story of how this all came to be just a few weeks ago.
Right.
And the one thing that he's really been working on my heart, it kind of went from working on judgment itself, which is, I think, what really brought the peace for me. And then it was deepening my faith. And then from there, it was working on my obedience. And now that he's called me to do this, I'm like, is this going to turn into some like a modern way of pastoring, like a from a digital perspective? But then I look at pastoring as like, you got to go to, do all these different things to be a real pastor. But then to hear you say that you're now a pastor more than ever, right, I think opens up my mind to what a pastor could be. Right. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that. I know it's a lot to take in on it, but
no, you're good. So it's the same conversation you'd have if you didn't have a healthy father growing up. Like, what does a healthy father even look like? And how do I call myself that when I haven't experienced that? For some. And so pastor, and I just say that because there are certain words and there are certain things that really trigger people, right? If you didn't have a healthy relationship with your dad, it's hard to visualize God as a loving father if you didn't have one. And if you've been hurt by pastors or by people who are in active leadership inside the walls of the church, then that can be very off-putting. Or if they felt, or you were made to feel that they were somehow superior, then that role is only reserved for the select few. But to pastor just means to shepherd and to lead. And we're all called to lead. As men and women, like we're called to steward what's been given to us. We're called to steward well in our homes and we're called to steward well in marketplace and to set a different standard. And to pastor simply means that I live my life in such a way that it might bring about question in terms of the peace that occupies my soul and the purpose that fills my life. And if that's a conversation that you're interested in, I'm always having the conversation through my actions. We may just choose to put words to it. Mm-hmm. And if we choose to put words to it, then that's pastoring. I'm walking with you through the process of your own reconciliation to what faith means to you. And I'm walking with you without judgment, without condemnation, because I've been through my own junk, and you could judge me just as quick. And we could run down the laundry list of things that I've done wrong in my life and the ways that I have run from God and have been incredibly prodigal. But the witness to that is that God never stopped chasing me. And as a result of him never stopping chasing me, that's the mark on my life, is that God has always chosen me, just like he's always chosen you. And so to pastor is just to hold up a mirror, but not a mirror of what people see in themselves due to the trauma and the experiences of their life, but hold up a mirror to what Scripture and what God says about them and the redemption of Christ and the authority of the Holy Spirit and the calling of God, and to reflect that well. So we're all pastors, every single one of us. Some of us, again, it's just whether we recognize it or not. We're always preaching, and we're always sharing a sermon. The question is it bearing fruit that's useful? Is it healthy, or is it destructive? Mm. And either way, it's confirming what we believe to be true, or what we believe we deserve.
So I'm pastoring. Okay. Accepted.
Always.
Yeah. It's such a, thank you for sharing that, especially in that way. Cause I think it's like I had a definition, and that definition created resistance to the acceptance of it. Right. And that definition was given to me.
Yeah.
Right. And then I watched it acted out. I'm like, I don't want to be that.
Well, and then when you recognize the call in your life, I mean, that should inspire you or motivate you to want to know more about it. Mm-hmm. Right. So like I have boys, and they're both 10, and they're still at the age where they want to do everything with me, right? Like Stetson holds my hand all the time, always wants to be near me, always wants to know what I'm doing. I don't miss, so I'm at every practice, games, like unless I just happen to have a speaking engagement, that I just don't miss. And he's so fascinated, like they're so fascinated by me, like all kids are with their parents. They just want to be around you. They just want to know you. And they just want to know all the things. And they want to do what you do, right? If we had a fraction of that kind of awe and wonder and exploration towards God, like understanding that you're called to pastor, to shepherd, to lead, to walk with people, because that's just a fruit and a byproduct of your relationship with God. It should be part of the outpouring. You know, my sons are very respectful because their dad's respectful. Mm-hmm. You know, my sons are generous because I'm generous, right? Eventually, if my actions don't align with my words, they're going to know I'm full of it. So they just model what I do. And the only way that you can model what God does is to get in his word and know who he is. And so that should inspire and motivate you to want to know more, and to want to dig in, and to want to just spend time with him like your kids want to spend time with you.
Are you still in the Word daily?
Every day.
Amazing. How long do you spend in it?
Hour to 2 hours. Yeah.
I know that's obviously one of the biggest habits, but are there any other habits, right, to get a little tactical for a second, as far as anything that can be integrated right now, or maybe a man who's fallen off in certain habits? Do you feel like there's any habit specifically that you know that you sustain and has helped you sustain this level of maintaining your relationships as a father, as a husband, and as a businessman?
Yeah. One, know what you're doing with your time. So audit your time often, and have accountability to that audit, because you can be honest with yourself but still not be telling yourself the objective truth, right? Because you're confirming old patterns and beliefs through
Yeah.
your actions. So audit your time, know what you're doing on a daily basis, and that everything should, for the most part, have an intention. So I don't have like 20 bajillion things I do in the morning. I wake
Yeah.
up. Right now we have a bunch of puppies, so like I got to wrangle all them. Let my dogs outside, drink some water. Um, but I get into the Word for a while, pray, quiet, don't talk, no music, no nothing. Um, you know, back in the day, you might call that like meditation or something. I just quiet time with God. And then I look over my morning, like email and stuff, make sure like we don't have any fires to put out. Thankfully, usually we don't. I'm going to go to the gym to confirm that I'm an athlete. So I go to the gym, train for an hour and a half or two, come back home, shower, jump back in bed with my wife before the kids wake up. Because I'm a morning person. My wife's like not really a Christian until about 9 a.m. So she likes to wake up slow, and she like, cuddle, play with her hair, all that stuff. Breakfast with, kids, and again, asking about the day. Then I know what my day looks like. Everything's planned out, mapped out, everything. I operate on a schedule, right? Like you can show me what you actually care about if you just show me your schedule. I wrap up my day to then go to practice. So we have practices pretty much every night, wrestling, baseball, and football. And so I don't miss. And then in the evenings after practice, we have dinner, and then I have quality time with my wife. Date nights. We do, flowers every week. Write my wife love notes a lot on the mirror of our bathroom with a dry erase marker. Like little things that confirm that you are who you say you are. Remembering to send your wife a text throughout the day to just let her know that you're thinking about her and that you're grateful that she chose you and what she means to you. And making sure you're doing the same for your kids and making sure that you're vocal with them. So they're just little things that I do every day. But then the broader part of this is just I keep a schedule, and my schedule is pretty tactical. I don't do a lot of things that all the real successful guys do, like cold plunge and all that stuff. But this seemed to work out well for me.
Yeah.
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 I do enjoy a good cold plunge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't. I don't do all the biohacking stuff.
Yeah.
Because you could get hit by a car tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to the ability to stay grounded in your values,
Yeah.
right, it seems like you've been there for a while now. Did something change? Is there a point where you were really shooting for the moon and more focused on material things or material
sure.
success,
Yeah.
and that shifted? And if so, what was it that brought you back down to what you truly wanted?
Yeah. Well, when you don't come from money, and then you're a pastor and you make like 35 grand a year, so you're like balling on a heavy budget.
Yeah.
and then you start to make real money. And yeah, dude, I bought so much dumb stuff that I never needed.
Yeah.
Just to prove to people who don't actually care
Yeah.
who I was. Because we don't ever have it like, you get a little spicy with it. And what wrangled me back in, I guess you could say, was one, it just wasn't me. Two, you don't sustain that. At least it just wasn't like I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Three, I genuinely got put into rooms with really successful people, like people who have exited massive companies, who run massive companies, who have amazing families, who love God, and they had none of the nonsense of like material success that you see on the internet. So I was just following the wrong voices. And so God was really generous in putting me in rooms with men that I actually wanted to be like, men that reminded me of my grandfather, and men of high value and high integrity, and humbled me to be, even in my success, be like one of the like least material successful people in the room. So to flex is like, they know you don't have it like they have it.
Yeah.
Because you would need to prove it.
Yeah.
Right. And so by being in those rooms, I just recognized that there are better things that I can steward my finances for. I still want to make as much money as humanly possible because we have massive initiatives. We want to rescue more girls from trafficking, and all of that takes money. It takes prayer, absolutely, but 99% of problems are solved by money. So if God's called me to the vision of helping bring restoration, that requires financial support. And so I unapologetically want to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with money, but I understand what money does and the tool that it is and the resource that it is. So there's just a responsibility and a maturity that comes when you hang out in the right circles and you surround yourself with the right kind of men.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the shift. The shift was seeing what money could actually do, not just how it looks.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting. On the call that we had, you mentioned that you grew up in a trailer, which I did as well.
Yeah.
And then just like the humble beginnings, like my wife and I were talking about this even just a couple weeks ago. There's still things that come up of like
that scarcity is really hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so even for us, there's after going so long without not having nice things, then finally able to have nice things.
Yeah.
Right. There's a little bit more care.
Sure.
Well,
there's care, but there's also permission you have to give yourself. Because for me growing up, like money wasn't for people like us.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of success, not for people like us. And so you have to reprogram that maybe it is for me. If God's no respecter of persons, why not me? And he's uniquely made me and equipped me to solve these problems and to be a support in these ways. But then also, what I have found very interesting is like the very people that I thought would be the ones cheering me on, especially like some in my immediate family and things of that nature, are the ones who cannot accept that I'm successful now. And I would find myself, like if I would go to family gathering or something, it's like, well, let me take this off really quick because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable, and so you would just hide. You would hide what God's doing in your life, and you would put that calling, let me just put it over here because I don't want to offend you, and I don't want you to think God's not calling you. And what I had to come to terms with is, if I'm going to be quiet about what God's doing in my life, then I'm giving you permission to stay small. And I'm giving you permission to be quiet about what God's doing in your life. And we don't build kingdom that way. And if God chose me the way that my son is so excited to say that he's my son, I step into that school and he's the most proud, like, that's my dad. Or I'll do an interview and he'll see it on YouTube. That's my dad. Or he gets to travel with me and he stands on a stage with me and there's thousands of people. That's my dad. I got to shout the same thing. And the call on my life is too great to be worried about offending your insecurities. So
it's interesting. The person that comes up where I think I still do that is my mom.
Sure.
She gets so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that so expensive?
Yeah.
All these things.
Why do you need that?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
To the point where like we even talk like we don't even want to mention like how much the houses that we just got because and that's the first question they ask and then it's just this whole thing. But the difference is now, and I haven't gotten into the habit of communicating it so clearly, which you're reflecting back to me and I appreciate so much, is how it's happening. Because she, for the longest time, told me, oh, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And she would repeat that all the time.
Yeah.
And then finally, when he called and I answered, I've shared a little bit of the journey with her, but I haven't shared the fruit.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I get so bothered by her reaction sometimes that I'm just like, I don't even want to bother. But I think there's also a little bit of a disbelief that it'll change her ways and her mindset around money, where even just saying that out loud, I know that it's just what I have to do because I have to just be honest. And if anything's going to change it, it's going to be what she sees done in my life.
But you also have to recognize, man, that like everybody's the main character in their own story,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's the main character, and you're a supporting actor. And you have to fulfill a very, very certain role in that storyline for everything in the story to make sense. And so the minute that you change that storyline, the minute that you do something different, that you decide to heal something, that you decide to put a boundary up, that you decide that maybe you are worthy enough to create a different level of success in your life than your family's ever seen, well, that creates an accountability that they didn't ask for, and that accountability is always perceived as a threat. And so in that, some people will never be able to see where you're going. They'll never be able to accept the call on your life. They'll never be able to accept the success. They're always going to see you as who you've been, not who God's calling you to become, because it will confront so much of their story, and so much of their own story would have to erode and shift and evolve. And everybody wants the resurrection, but nobody wants the death side. But the only way that resurrection happens is if there's a death of ego, a death of beliefs, a death of situational circumstances, death of stories, death of how we do things and why we do things and the agreements that we've made. And some people have to hold on to those agreements because it props up everything that they believe about themselves to be true. And so they don't get to see you. They can see you evolve, but they can't accept it, because to accept it means that there's too much confrontation that has to happen.
And then from there, change.
And then change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like part of what God is doing right now with having us move to Miami and not giving us, I think there's a lot that he's doing, right? But I think part of that is removing us from the environment that has a certain perception on us that was who we were before he called, before we answered.
Sure.
And even knowing that perception, I feel like can hold you into a box.
It definitely makes things trickier, right? Like, I live where I grew up.
Yeah.
I have never moved away. Everybody says you need to move away to be successful. You got to get out of your hometown. You don't. I've done pretty well.
Well, I think
But it is infinitely more tricky because, one, you're not necessarily, especially in like, you're not surrounded by people who desire the same thing. So you have to find that community somewhere else. For most, life is a little slower than kind of the pace that you're trying to set for yourself. And so then you have to recognize that not everybody's going to understand. And then you're also going to probably potentially offend people, because if you stay where you've always been, like, there's a storyline of your entire life that exists. And then to shift and change that just creates confusion for people. And also, it's very easy to create a little bit of success in a small town and be the small town hero and settle there, versus going somewhere like Miami, where, you know, people are driven to create more, and it is a much faster pace, and it is a place where not that you can't be anyone that you want to be anywhere, but it's hard to rewrite old stories in familiar places. So
the reason why you stay in Tulsa is family, right? Like, is that the main?
Oh yeah, dude. You couldn't. Yeah. My son, like, you know, Stet's mom and I have a great relationship, and you couldn't pay me enough money to move away from my son, and I would never entertain the idea of, like, well, what if he came? Like, we'd never split up a family in that way, and I would never choose an opportunity over my son. There's not enough money or clout or anything in this world. And my family's here, my grandma's here, my dad's here, my brother's here, my sister's here, my nephews are here. The most successful part about me is I'm with my family all the time.
Yeah, it's the thing I admire most about you. Like, that is the one thing that to me stood out.
Yeah.
That I see, and even in my mentors, I see that they're making a trade-off that I don't want to make. And so that really was my next question, is the man that is making that trade right now, and he's fallen into it consistently, and he's telling himself a story of, you know, I'm building this for them.
Yeah.
Right. And then he's not there for them.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to him?
Well, one, you never get time back. And there's going to be a day when your kids recognize that they can't count on you emotionally, so they'll stop asking. And that'll be a really dark day. And I've worked with a lot of men who live in a lot of regret and would give all the things that they built back if they could have just been present more. Kids didn't ask you to build anything big. You did. And you can be called to it, or your ego can be called to it, or you can find yourself running in circles where that's what's celebrated. But you decide. And, for so many of us, it's interesting, so many of us got in business because, one, we wanted to solve problems, but also, two, we wanted to create, financial independence because maybe we didn't have it growing up. And so the interesting thing is, like, you grow up and money's hard and money's difficult. And that's why dad's always working. That's why dad drinks at night. That's why mom cries in the kitchen. That's why, life is stressful, is because money's hard. And that's why we don't have anything. I don't have the things that my friends have because money's hard for us. So then you go and you overwork fixing the money problem, but really you're just trying to heal your own inner child by giving your kid more stuff, but you're still perpetuating the trauma that all you actually really needed was two healthy, loving parents in your home. And you're perpetuating the trauma of giving them more stuff but still being absent, but thinking you're fixing it because of the material side and the provision side. And so my consideration is that's amazing, and you can have it all. You can do that and be present and be loving and not miss the moments and not write off the miraculous in your life because you call it mundane.
Yeah. Well, it's also like at a certain point of financial freedom, right? Even at like $30,000 a month, past that, it's like it's not changing your lifestyle too much.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I have friends in Miami that like have a $200,000 a month burn.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
well, when you do that, yeah, for sure, of course.
Yeah.
But as far as like what I'm getting at is that at a certain level of growth, business wise,
it's money.
then it's just you're going after that and losing that time with your family when you can actually have both. And and the thing that
you just have to build well. You have to have really good systems and infrastructure. You need to be good at delegating. You need to be a strong leader and visionary, but not in the day-to-day of all of your operations at that kind of scale. When you get past like, $30K a month is, healthy. But once you get into, 1, 2, 3 million a month, like just the game changes and the infrastructure changes. Can you still be as present with your family? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes systems, and it takes infrastructure, and it takes team, right? And it takes vision.
Yeah.
And boundaries. A lot of boundaries.
Yeah. I guess more so what I'm getting at is the point, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, because as somebody who's building a family and building big things, but I think the biggest thing and the most important thing you could build as a family is young men.
Sure.
Like having a son and a stepson, like that to me, like I'd rather focus on building them and stay at $1 million, 2 million, than sacrifice that, right? Which obviously you don't have to because you can build the systems and everything. But there's a lot of men that are sacrificing it for numbers, right? But I feel like one of them, and again, God said to be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
What is the point of that multiplying?
Yeah. And maybe just nobody's shown them a different way.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe it's not that they don't want it, it's just that they don't know how to build that.
Yeah.
Because the story's always been, no, I'm the hardest worker in the room. No, it's the person who works the hardest to eat. Like that was a lot of story for me, was that, Jeffersons work hard. We're first in, we're last out. And I had to really alter that, because if that is true, then I'll miss everything. So how do I, I like working hard, but also how do I work smart? Because smart scales. I know a lot of people who work really, really hard and do not have financial independence.
Yeah.
Right. So it can't just be working hard. You have to work smart.
I love it. Yeah, I'm excited right now to be in a position where, with what I'm building, really approaching it slow and smart, instead of feeling like I need to build it fast or get it to scale quickly or anything of that nature. Like really, because I've learned from a lot of my own mistakes in the past. So to finally be in a position where I don't have to do that and like get to certain numbers to sustain is, I guess part of that has been faith, has offered that peace in the pursuit of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I know we're coming up on time here. I got a couple questions left for you.
Okay.
Well, actually, if we can, there's one story
Oh.
that I'd love for you to just dive into briefly of this.
When I got confused for Brad Pitt. That never happened.
No, but that's a good one too. The transition from pastor to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. There was a conference you went to, and that kind of like
yeah.
for you kind of set things off on the yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you want that story?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, 2017, I was writing a bunch of stuff on the internet, and things were pretty free back then, so I was going viral quite a bit, which was cool. And I was just sharing my story and sharing kind of where I was at in the journey I was on, and trying to make sense of loss and faith and divorce and everything else. And the founder, and I was starting to coach, but I was coaching like more fitness stuff than life or anything. And the founder of this conference messaged me on Facebook and was like, "Hey, you should come to this conference." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything going on. I can find a cheap flight," because again, like I wasn't like balling, I was on a budget. And sure, sounds fun. So I go to the conference. There's like 300 or 400 people there, which they said was big. And I'm used to church conferences that are like thousands of people. So I was like, oh, okay, cool, different room. And at any rate, the power went out. So it's in Phoenix in like June. And so I had never been to Phoenix. It's a different kind of heat. So wow, it's like Satan's armpit. And so we're in this steel building, and the power goes out. Well, it's a steel building, and it's 1,000,000 degrees. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you could fry an egg on the sidewalk. And if you've never been to Phoenix, that's what you're missing. So at any rate, I go outside, and I'm like, because they're working out there, I'm like, "Hey guys, what do we got here?" And they're like, "Well, like Transformers blew, so it's gonna be tomorrow before we can get this back and operational." And I didn't know anybody, but like I know how to talk to people. Like, just pastor playbook. I'm just gonna get to know everybody's story. Everybody's there for a reason. Everybody's looking to grow in some way. And so when you can be there, you are person versus here I am, right? You become a very popular person in the room because you're the one who's just collecting everybody's stories, and everybody's got a story to share. And then when you know the story, you can connect them to other people who might be able to solve their problem, right? And so that was my play. And so the power goes out, and it's lunchtime, so the food trucks are out there, and it's tomorrow before it gets turned back on. Mind you, I've been out of the church for maybe a month and a half. Not long.
Was that soon?
Yeah, it was quick, dude. It was
fast.
Easter.
Yeah,
Easter was when I stepped out. And so now we're June. So it's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I called the hotel, and I'm like, "Hey, we need shuttles because we need to bring everybody back to the hotel. I need a room set up with 300 chairs, 2 projectors. We need 2 screens, 2 handhelds, 2 lav mics, and we're going to run everything back. We're going to pipe it into a laptop. How long before we can get that set up? Can we get that set up?" "Yes, sir. No problem. Give us 60 minutes. Perfect." I go, "Oh, please send the shuttles." I go over to, because they had shuttled everybody over. The spot was called Galvanize. So then I go to the food truck guys, and I'm like, "Hey, we need everybody to move over. Power's out. We're just going to do lunch over there." And I talk to the AV guy. I then go to the host, the founder of the conference, and I tell him, like, "Here's what's going on. Here's where we're moving. We need an hour. Because we're on lunch, we're only going to lose about 15 minutes, and we'll just reconvene over there." And he just looks at me and goes, "Who the F are you?" And dude, I sunk. Like,
Was this the one that invited you as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And I sunk because I'm like, oh my God, I ruined everything.
Yeah.
I overstepped. I forgot that I wasn't in church. I just was treating it like a church conference. I totally forgot. Hadn't it been out
Muscle
long
memory
enough.
reaction.
Yeah, dude. It was just like, this happened. This is what we need to do. Done. And I thought, there goes any opportunities I had. I just ruined that relationship. Turns out I didn't. It became the thing that the rest of the day, everybody was like, how'd you know how to do that? That was crazy. How did you do that? And we're eating lunch, and there's this guy with like white hair that's eating by himself. And I'm like, pastor, like, that's not going to work. So I go sit with him. He's like, hey, you're the pastor. I'm like, I'm the pastor. He's like, I knew you were when I saw how you handled that. He's like, nobody does that. He's like, I'm a pastor. I'm like, thank God. And he's like, well, I took over my dad's ministry. He's like, you should be on my podcast. And I was like, oh, dude, what is a podcast? I have no idea. Like, what is that?
300 later.
Yeah. He's like, oh, it's like a show on iTunes. I was like, oh, like a radio show. He's like, well, yeah, like a radio show, but on iTunes. I was like, cool. Yeah, we can do that. I was like, when do you want to do that? He's like, right now. I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, it's just right upstairs. I was like, okay, cool. Side note, probably just don't go with men you don't know to rooms. You know what I'm saying? But I was so green. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I sit down. And there's a gentleman named Tom Bilyeu who had founded a company called Quest Nutrition. And he's like, man, how'd you know how to do all that? I was like, I was a pastor. He's like, so what do you do now? And dude, I don't know. I don't have an LLC. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just there. And so I'm like, I help pastors take guns out of their mouths. And he looks at me and goes, that's effing heavy. Do you lead with that? I was like, I don't know. Now I'm like questioning. I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, that's pretty heavy, dude. I was like, what about like helping good men become great? He's like, go with that one. I was like, okay, cool. So we're all sitting there, and the gentleman goes, are you ready? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you have a bio? I'm like, no. And he's like, that's fine. I've done this before. And he puts cans on, his headphones, and he's like, hey, everybody, welcome back. This is Alan Taylor with Entrepreneur Magazine, Entrepreneur.com, and Entrepreneur Radio. And I'm like, oh, crap.
Wow.
I'm in way over my head. And so I share my story. He just asked me questions about my story, and I share what brought me there. I share about, the power going out. We share all of that. It goes viral, gets syndicated like USA Today and Today's Show and everything. And that led me to being on like, I don't know, close to 200 podcasts in a year.
In a year?
Dude, I was doing like 2 and 3 a day.
Exhausting. On like,
and just all, that's
virtual?
why all Zoom.
Okay.
All Zoom. And some of them were like, and I was just taking anyone I could get. Like some of these had like maybe 10 downloads.
Yeah.
And it was clunky, and I wasn't really good at sharing my story yet. I was good at telling stories because that's all you do as a pastor. So I got that down.
Yeah.
And so I'm just telling stories. And my thought process was, even if nobody listens, I can clip up the content.
Yeah.
And if perception's reality, like I look like I'm in demand because I'm on all these podcasts. And so I'll just say yes to everyone.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to really refine things. It also like got really old because typically you're asked like the same 10 questions.
Yeah.
Because anybody starting a podcast, like they're just trying to kind of leverage your name, which I didn't really even have a name other than the one God gave me. And, but yeah, dude, so when people are like, how can I do what you, I'm like, it was God. It wasn't me. Like, that was all God. Like, and so, yeah, dude, that's, it's so interesting. Like, there are giftings that you have in your life and ways in which you've cultivated experiences in your life. And there are things that you do so naturally that you don't even recognize the gift in them anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was a real catalyst moment for me to recognize that everything that I had done inside of the church, all of it, learning how to communicate effectively, team development, leadership development, recognizing that even the church is a business. Getting people to come on a Sunday morning, that's your top of funnel. Getting people to make a commitment, right? That's your CTA. The retention, so getting that recurring customer is getting them on a tithe. and then getting them involved in small groups, getting them involved in communities. So now they're tied emotionally. And then your affiliate is getting them to bring someone. And then it's all like,
Yeah.
I don't mean it to be so, but it is. And so then everything revolves around marketing and sales and distribution and growth. And
Jesus was the best marketer of all time.
Right, we're still talking about him. And so all of that prepared me. Like I'll say the pulpit was always preparation for the platform God had planned.
So the reason why I brought this up was to ask you a question around the identity shift. But it seems like it was somewhat seamless, even though during the time it probably didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of that transferred over.
Well, and there's still landmines that I step on that I have to heal.
Like what?
So even with my wife, recognizing that she's the most peaceful person you'll ever meet. And I would create chaos because I felt like we can't just you don't just love me for me.
Yeah.
And so I had to heal that, had to work through that. I think I probably still work on that. And I think there's probably going to be always a part of me that is accepting that I can operate from peace and it doesn't require a fight. Recognizing that I'm enough, that I don't have to, because again, when you're on a stage, which I am still, and you're in front of people, like I am still, I mean, there is a tendency to perform and not know you're performing because it's like muscle memory. And so really doing the work every morning to thank God for who I am and to not hold myself hostage to some of the decisions that I've made in the past and the ways in which I've not stewarded his call like in a really healthy way, the people that I've hurt along the way, the ways that I didn't get it right, and recognizing that in all of that, God still chose me. And so I think that's why I align so much with the story of David, is that he didn't get everything right, and he made some really big mistakes. But God continued to bless him because he knew whose he was. And I believe that God's just continued to bless me in spite of myself because I know I'm his. And I'm always going to point back to everything being his.
I feel like over the last few months specifically, I've been deepening my understanding of God's heart for me, and it is. And now that you're saying it, it's like the one thing that I feel like I wish I could figure out how to communicate so clearly to men so that they could understand and desire to pursue God the same way that I have been, and not in a way of comparing, just because of what it's given me.
Yeah.
Like I just like if there's one thing that I can help a man do, it's just to inspire that action. And because of like once you actually understand God's heart for you, that's the part I think a lot of men are stuck on.
Yeah. Well, then there's nothing to Richard Rohr in a book called Falling Upward that every man should read. Would have you consider that like true spiritual understanding is when there's nothing to prove, hide, or protect. And I think as men, we're conditioned to do all three of those very naturally. And when you can recognize that you're not fighting for success and for victory, you're actually operating from it, and it's a gift that has been given to you, it just changes things. And so, like building business, for an example, or anything that we put our hands to, it's not because you have to, it's because you're called to, and you get to. And you get to build it with your father, should you choose to. And I know for my own sons, the favorite thing to do is build things with me. And so I get to build with him. And when we can reframe it that way, like, man, then everything becomes spiritual and everything becomes worship. And it should also, it shifts your heart and your posture, right? I don't have anything to prove. I don't need to be arrogant. I don't need to flex. There's none of that. I just need to steward well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's really, it's just bringing excitement to me with this in itself.
Good.
Because I'm like, I just never thought that would be my path.
Yeah.
And to have the clarity and dedication and desire for whatever he desires,
Yeah.
way over anything I desire. Just like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't. Like, just whatever you want to do, send me.
Well, because you recognize, dude, if you're a healthy dad, right? So we got to qualify that, like your motivations and your intentions, and you lead your life well. Like when you lead your kids, so long as they trust you, they want to listen to you and follow you, not because you're trying to thwart their growth or keep them from having fun. You're trying to protect them.
Yeah,
You're like,
or to get gifts.
yeah, you're like, hey, listen, like I know you think this is the path, but I'm telling you, like, there's a healthier path here. And if you need to go down that path, like, to learn for yourself, I can't stop you, right? But in the same way, operating like in a closeness with God through Holy Spirit and through Scripture and through accountability and through wise counsel and through bearing fruit and being able to recognize that fruit, you naturally start to recognize that there's nothing, I don't want to do anything unless I've taken it to him first. And so then I need to be in tune with that voice, which means I got to get quiet. And then I need to run it through a filter, which means I need accountability I trust. And so now we're not just making flippant decisions, we're making ordained decisions. So,
What does that accountability look like for you?
yeah, I mean, I have mentors in my life. I have pastors in my life. I have dear, dear friends in my life that we check in often. And, you know, some of my mentors are able to answer the questions as we grow our endeavors and how to steward that effectively or how to grow effectively at scale. I have others that I go to, marriage insights and things of that nature. And also, I mean, we have our brotherhood. And so I recognize that, like, I'm called to set a standard, and that's a gift, and it's a responsibility. And, you know, there have been seasons of my life in leadership that I was completely out of integrity and, you know, saying one thing and doing another. And God gets glory from anything and everything. And so, you know, there was still fruit from it, but the fruit was hollow in my life. And I just don't want to run that race anymore. And so for me, I don't require a lot of motivation. I don't require a ton of hand-holding. What I need in my life is the support of my wife, obviously, but the support of other men who are on a similar path, some further ahead so that I can see where to go, some at the same pace so there's accountability, and some a little further down the mountain than me so that I have those that I can help walk with and shepherd and lead and pastor.
Yeah, love it. When it comes to...
And my boys are watching.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that.
Yeah.
We're working on it. We'll be...
Are you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to become a dad like ASAP. Yeah, we're working on it. So
good for you.
Yeah,
it's the best thing, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to just like, even again, these conversations. It's such an incredible opportunity again, and to serve God, and like, I never.
And my boys are great, man, and they're different. They're so different.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it fun. So it makes it rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question here, as far as like anything tactical or just getting into application for the man that, you know, he believes in God.
Yeah.
But he's not really getting into the Word, doesn't feel inspired to get in the Word, and doesn't really understand relationship with God, and feels like he can do it on his own. Is there any other advice you'd give him besides just getting into the Word? Or maybe even a message for him, right? If it's not...
Yeah, I mean, your life will be infinitely richer the more that you devote to those things.
Yeah.
And it's just like anything. It's just like keeping your marriage alive. It takes pursuit, even sometimes when you don't feel like it. But what we pursue grows in our heart. So even if you don't feel like it right now, that, okay, but if this is who you say you are, then what are the daily habits that confirm that? And if you say you are these things, I'm not saying like go read the Bible cover to cover, but maybe just grab like today is, what did I say, the 9th? Something like that?
Yep.
So maybe you just go read the proverb of the day. Go read Proverbs 9. Go read Psalms 9. Right? Go get some wisdom for the day. That's why like in our brotherhood, like I post a reflection of like our daily proverb. I post a reflection every morning. Just because if you're not going to open like the Bible, you're going to read that and it's going to take you 60 seconds and it's going to fill you and it's going to give you something to think about and pray on. But we grow towards the things that we like. You don't just go to the gym one time and all of a sudden you're ripped, right? And not every day do I feel like going to the gym, to be honest. But if it's who I am, it's what I do. And so and those reps are what build the body. And the pursuit and the words of affirmation and the boundaries that you put in place and the date nights and the courting and all of those, that's what builds a healthy marriage. Otherwise, you're just roommates. And so the same is true with God. Like if we don't make time to just sit in his presence, and if we don't take time to actually learn who he is, we can't really say that we have a relationship. And what a waste to get to the end of your life and stand before God and say, yeah, but like I built all of this. And he'd be like, oh no, like, yeah, what you built was impressive. I'm not saying that. I just never called you to it. And you used my name a lot, but you never talked to me. So you built on a faulty platform and used my name for leverage, but I actually never knew you, and that's all I wanted the whole time. And imagine what we could have built together.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
You're bringing it in for a landing.
I'm bringing it in.
You're
for a
bringing it
landing.
in.
Yeah,
You're bringing it
we're
in.
starting to descend, right?
Yeah.
Who's one man you believe reflects God's character and whose fruit speaks for itself that would be a powerful guest for the podcast? We talked about integrity on our call.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the biggest things for me.
I mean, I can think of so many men, but you're probably talking more like men of influence.
Well, I've got one more question that
Okay.
will be for. Let me give you a second, and you can just give me two.
Yeah, so I have several men in our brotherhood who'd be amazing guests because they're incredible men with incredible walks of integrity. You should try to get Jordan Peterson. He would be a good one. Very deep thinker. You know.
Yeah.
Might be tough, but
Yeah. We'll get there.
where
if
there's
not.
a will, there's a
Yeah.
way.
Hey,
God
God
opens that
told me,
door.
he's like, don't worry about the how. I'll take care of that part. You
Yeah.
just put this list down.
Yeah.
It'll happen in time.
Yeah. I have a good friend, Carl Lentz. He is a man who's been through a lot and has found a lot of healing on the backside of decisions he had made, and is just a dear friend and a powerful voice. So he would be somebody. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then a man without a platform that lives God's standards so deeply you believe the world needs to hear more from him. And this is obviously like, I want to know this because I've always thought of like how cool it would be during my like come up for a man that has a platform to like give me an opportunity. And that never happened. And that's just not my story necessarily, right? Or at least not yet. But it's something that I would love to offer when I have the opportunity to give it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'd love to start creating a list of a man that, you know, I think would, or that you think would have
Dude. I can
a
tell
great
you
impact.
my right hand in our brotherhood. His name is Justin Baker. Lives up in Washington proper. Incredible man of God, incredible family, built some incredible infrastructure and business, salt of the earth, one of my favorite human beings. Great man.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Noted. Awesome. Any last words for the audience?
No, I think I've thrown a lot of words.
You have.
I would just remind you that God chose you. And what you do with that is on you, and the standard that you set every day is on you, and you have a responsibility to live into the promise that God has called you to, if that's what you believe. And I believe that we're all here because we believe the same things, which is why you're listening and why you've made it this far. Congratulations. A lot of hearing me talk. God chose you, and you do with that what you will.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cody Jefferson, ladies and gentlemen. Probably more gentlemen than ladies, but
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Dude, honored to be here.
This podcast is sponsored by Steel, a brotherhood and a standard. If you know that you are lacking discipline, integrity, confidence, and the personal power required to build a fruitful relationship with yourself, your spouse, and God, while Make Men Godly Again is the movement, Steel is the method. If you're interested in working with me and joining a brotherhood of men who are all making the same journey together, go to makemengodlyagain.com/the-method and book a call with me. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and share us with a brother who needs to hear this. I'll see you in the next episode of the Make Men Godly Again podcast.